Everything you see here is strictly informational. This is not a channel for you to be taking financial advice from. I am not a financial advisor. I am not a broker. I am just a person that is here recording my journey about learning the markets along the way. So please do not consider me a financial advisor. Do not risk any more money than what you have. Do not be borrowing other people's money. Do not do anything stupid that you're going to regret later with your money. Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome to Bodies Wicks. It's me. My name is Ted. I am going to be going over my weekly outlook for S&P 500, or the SPX 500, however you want to call it. And we'll see what you guys think. Anyways, I've been looking at this for a while, and to think that this is the daily right here. So as we can see, ever since I want to do this from like a 2016 perspective, from the inauguration day and whatnot, because I think that's kind of the movement that it's going in. So if we're gonna draw a trend line, from the bottom of here and go up this direction, it's not gonna grow that way. I'm sorry guys, I hate to burst your bubble, but the economy is just not gonna do that. We came back with a quick recovery, but if anybody's drawing a trend line like that, I hate to tell you, it's not gonna work. However, if we go from about here and we kind of go along these bottom lines that are not like huge disruptions in the market, I think that's more the path that we're going on. So if we're going to do something like this, I forgot which way. I think this was the one I had. Yeah, I think it's going to grow something more along the lines like this. You can see we have multiple touching points here. I think these are just disturbances. Of course, you have COVID right here in the middle, and if we take that and we do a copy paste of it, we run along the top of this one, it makes a lot more sense. So we can kind of see we oversold here, and I think that's the truth. We're a bit oversold. As you can see, the most recent high touched the top of it. We're coming back down, so now we're more in a more predictable channel. That being said, we're at a high recently. If we're gonna use, I like to use, of course, smart money methods, Elliott Wave, and also Fibonacci. So if we're gonna use some of Elliott Wave here, let's just say this is the bottom, right? We had the very first 1, 2, 3, 4, or sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I do believe this was a 5, and so if we look at the daily here and we go not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but if we do the ABC retracement, I think we had more of a B, and so we're looking for C right now. I think it's going to come back down. This is my personal view. If we look at it on the weekly, it's kind of similar. We have more of a more defined A, B, and then a C down here. Because if you haven't noticed, we haven't been able to, especially on the weekly, daily we have, but the weekly we haven't. We haven't been able to get across this 32.30-ish mark, I want to say. Let's see what the open, 32.31 was the open for this. The close for this red one was 32.31. So yeah, 32.30-ish we haven't been able to cross on a close on a weekly. So I think that's kind of the the threshold. If we can get above that 32.30-ish level on a weekly, I think we're going to see more of an upward pattern. But most of you, or at least what I see on this weekly, is a kangaroo tail up here at the top. Kangaroo tail, generally says look to the left. Generally if there's, well, the bad thing is there is something immediate. If it was more of a open and close down here, or the open of it, was below the close, and it kept going downwards. Things somehow came back up. So if the body was more, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for a rectangle. If the body of the kangaroo tail was more like this, it'd probably be a little bit more enticing to trade off that. But the problem is that's where our resistance is as well. So that's what also kind of leads me to believe that this kangaroo tail is probably going to take it down further. As you can see, we had a little bit of a weird week last week where everything just kind of just grew out in the middle of nowhere, and during the middle of the week, everything was growing, and then all of a sudden, toward the end of the week, it just kind of came back. And generally, when I look at this, especially if I look at it like on a daily, not daily, but let's just go to a 4-hour chart. 4-hour chart's a little bit different because we're kind of at the bottom right here of the RSI. So those are the kind of things that also lead me to believe we could go a little bit higher, but I do think we're on the path to go lower, if that makes any sense. We could go higher, we're still not at the top of the channel just yet. But I do think we're on the path to reach somewhere around this point, and one of the reasons I think that is because there's still a lot of imbalances in this purple box purple and green box that I've labeled. There's a lot of imbalances in this area, so we still need to fill those imbalances. There's quite a few imbalances down here below that I think we still need to fill, and I think we're on the path to do so. I'm not for sure if this is the week to do it, but it would make sense. Considering this is kind of what we've formed anyway. The only thing about this, though, is that people could also say, especially if we're looking at a 4-hour chart, this could be the ABC here, right? And we're starting a new wave. And let's just go ahead and throw, so 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But then again, if we do that, we're also at the 5 point. We're looking at probably another ABC pullback. If we're looking at this, and again from another Elliott Wave standpoint, because I don't think this is going to be the AB and then C right here. I just don't see that happening because we're still pulling back. So of course I think this was going to be the C. And so this was the beginning of our first wave going up. So if we look at it in a closer manner, I think this is the way that it's looking. But what it's going to do at market open, I have no idea. It could go up and it could hit this, again to complete, maybe this is just a disruption in the 5 wave, kind of like how in between the 2 and the 3 we had a disruption, because I don't think this was a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 5 here, and then somehow we had an ABC or something like that. You just gotta kind of have to look at it on a broad scale. The 4 generally closes above the 1, things of that nature. So if we're looking at it, from that kind of aspect, I believe this is what we're looking at as far as an Elliott Wave. Generally, between the 2 and the 3, I could be completely wrong. This could actually be the 3. Right? This could be the 4, where we're kind of at now, and then we could be looking at a bigger 5. And if we are looking at a bigger 5, we're going to have to break this channel that I think we're currently in, right? And then that channel, we're probably going to have to eventually hit the high. So this is the high right here, and this goal mark. But I'm confident. I think we're going to get up to at least here. We're probably going to break the high soon. I don't know when. But if that's, I'm hoping this is the case, to be 100% honest. But, and honestly, this probably should be the way it goes now that I'm looking at it. I don't really think, well, I don't know. It could be either way. You guys tell me. You guys tell me what you think. Because if we do, let's see here. Sorry, I'm just playing with these for you guys, and you guys not really get anything out of this. I hope you are. But if this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, then we're looking at like an ABC retracement. And I still personally think there's still a lot of imbalances down here that we could see, a lower, definitely a lower take on this week, especially toward the end of the week. When I look at this, I like to take a look at the dollar and invert it. So if we invert this, hold on, invert price scale. So and this is, I kind of had this, if we look at it from like a daily or a weekly perspective, I kind of had this put into like a little triangle, right? And so since it's upside down right now, it broke out of this triangle. It's going upwards. We got past that low point and we're closed below that low point. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign for the dollar. So when I put this side by side to the XAU is something completely different, but it looks like the XAU upside down. But it kind of grew in the same way that SPX did. And why SPX has all these lines on here, I have no idea. But it kind of grew the same way that SPX did, right? Until it got toward the end. Once it got toward the end, then SPX kind of fell. It kind of fell in the same, like once the dollar got below that record low, or that one low that we have here that is around 94.68. Once it got below that, the XPS also started going lower instead of higher at that exact point. So that kind of led me to believe that it could be seeing a sign of, especially if the dollar continues to go lower, that could be a sign of the SPX going lower as well. So let's just get this off of here. Let's go back to SPX and get this off of inverted. And let's take a look at it from the 1 hour perspective. Because one thing I've been using lately, especially when it comes to these things, is a lot of Fibonacci. And what I've been using is 2 different levels that I kind of got from other people who use Fibonacci a lot. And I look at 2 different levels now. I look at a 71 and a 12.98. Because a lot of these levels kind of jump off this. So if we look at like this high, this low to this high, right? This 71 level kind of held. I mean, it got almost all the way down to here, but I think that was actually the 12.98 level, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll have to throw it upside down. So for going from here to here, it got a little bit below, but still that level held. It wasn't a perfect level, but this 12.98 and the 71, the other point was almost a 71 level. Those 2 levels kind of hold for some reason. Not 100% sure why, but I look at those 2, and I also look at the 50 mark. The 50 mark, if it holds above, then generally we're going upwards. Buying and selling generally sometimes it usually happens around that 12.98 and that 71 mark. I want to see if I can't find a good example. So a good example would be from earlier this week. We had this, and because I was in on this call, and if you saw this video, I was thinking, it's gonna. I got the call to get in this right around, where was it? What was it called? 3241. Yeah. So it was on its way down here, and if we want to take a close, we're pretty close on the hour. So 3241 was the level of the entry, which was 3241 right here. So here was the entry that was called. I was thinking, okay, that's a little bit below the 618. I think it's going to at least get to the 618. And I should have stuck with my gut. Like I said, if you have a gut feeling, and I understand why the 41, it was because you didn't think it was going to get past this. But with this being, I took this as a whole wave right here. Right, I didn't measure from this. I measured it from the most recent low to the most recent high. Right, and I think this was the most recent low. I think this was kind of like a in between wave. And if we look at it like that, it got down to the 71 mark, right? So it got down to the 71 mark and held. Now, if I would have been smart, I would have. Those are the two I would have looked at. I would have looked at that 12.98 because that's when it eventually, it came back up to that 12.98 and sold from there, right? Came down to the 71, just a little bit below, not exactly to the 78.5. That's another level that I like to look at, but I don't like to look at the 618 or the 382. And the reason I don't like to look at those is because that's where everybody's expecting you to look. And if you're going where everybody's expecting you to look, then it's they're gonna beat you out of your game because everybody's gonna have their entries placed there and their stop losses placed just below. So if you think like a bank, you want to take those people out. So if you want to take those people out, you're going to have to go lower. So there's two levels I look at. And if you look at it from this perspective as well, this eventually, whenever this new high came in, this old level was a 12.98. So it was almost like when this came in, right, the banks measured this already. They knew it was going to come up to here because they're going to say, oh, okay, well, this is the new 12.98 level, right? So now we know from this point we can go to here. So it almost seems like this right here, this bullish candle right here was going to be basically like, hey, we know it's going to hit this high, so let's just go ahead and make it hit this high. On its way down, and whenever we entered in on the 41, you could see the struggle, and I was like, okay, this is actually a good level. This 32.41 level, I was like, this is a good level because you could see it struggling. And then all of a sudden, but I knew, I told myself, I said, if I'm going to enter on this, it is going to keep pushing lower. And sure enough, it just kept going. And we had it set to 33.31 was the first stop loss. The second 31 we took to 32.26. As you can see, it got down to 32.24. So, if I'd have been doing what I have been doing and looked at this 71 level and said, you know what, 30.26 is actually probably the level we should probably be looking at, I probably would have made a good call. And then what I actually did is I kept buying, because it kept bouncing up from between this 32.35 and this 30.41 is what it kept doing. As you can see, between these two, within these couple hours, it kept doing this. So that's what I was doing. Since I had lost all that, I kept buying down here and selling up here, buying down here, because it just kept bouncing around. I tried to make my money back, and I made a little bit of it back. But then at one point, I just toward the market close, I just held, and I held and I watched it until it hit this 50 mark, and it hit this 50 mark, and then it turned around and went right back. And I was like, okay, that's not a good sign. I like the 50 mark because the 50 mark is what I call the turn. I'm pretty sure some of you have been taught it that way. So if it hits the 50 mark and it reacts off the 50 mark, more than likely it's going to go the opposite direction, right? If you were just watch it at any level, basically, it could hit this 38 too, and it could go the opposite direction, because that would be your one wave going the opposite direction. But it hit the 50 instead, so I got out here at the 50, and I waited to see what it was going to do. I honestly thought it was going to come back down to the 71, but I watched it and it went straight through and it kept going lower. Came down to the, basically the old entry. It didn't even come down to the 12.98, the other level I look at. It kind of held that 12.98 as far as closing, if I'm not mistaken. Let me throw these the opposite direction. Yeah, so it almost held this 12.98. It started off as the 11, but I found some other people that teach the 12.98, so it's right around the same mark. Gives you a little bit more leeway. I like the 12.98 for some reason. And it didn't close anywhere below that. Well, it did a little bit, not too much. But now it's starting to make its way back up. Now, if you look at the hourly here, you do see some divergence. So you'll see here it made a low on the RSI, Here it made a little bit of a lower low on the RSI, and then here at the lowest low, it's starting to move upwards on the RSI, so it's starting to gain strength. So whenever I see this, I do think it could go upwards. Now, that's what leads me to believe that we could, see a turnaround. It could come up to the top of this channel before it comes back down. But I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a magician. But that's just the kind of way I've been looking at the SPX right now. I personally do believe at the beginning of the week it is going to go up, but I think we're going to struggle this week. I don't think we're going to break a new high. We could. I mean, it's absolutely possible. But what's going on in the news and price of gold, the dollar, the way everything's looking, I think we're gonna start going lower again. I think we're gonna get a new high though. I don't think we're gonna get an all-time high. I think we're gonna get a new high on this channel. But I do think we're eventually gonna start going lower. And if we start looking at this 4-hour channel, I think we're gonna see a pullback somewhere around here probably. But I'm not 100% on that, but that's just the way I've been looking at it. Of course, you have to, with the most recent thing, I always have to look at the most recent thing. I've also looked at this as a whole wave too, especially this one right here, because this was the most, I would call this, it's definitely its own wave, before it came back down to here, and then it started this 1, 2, 3, 4, which I believe is probably the 5. I look at this as a whole wave 2 to see where it's at. Again, it's at that 71. It didn't make it past that 71 level, so that's a reaction level. I think we could see it turn around, go the other way. When it turns around, goes the other way. That's when I'll flip it and I'll watch the 12.98 level. Right, you flip it, you watch the 12.98 level. See if there's a reaction off that. So that would be right around here. That's 32.55. If there's no reaction off that, I think it's going to go higher. That's just kind of the way I do things. Now, the reason I kind of have these boxes down here is because even there is a lot of imbalances right here, and it just so happens to be in between the 71 and 75 level, which is interesting to say the least. So there's some imbalances here. There's also some imbalances down here as well, in this region. And I got it on this. I need to take it off. There's some imbalances through here. So I think we could, and that's one of the reasons why I think we could see, a lower drive. I don't really think there's any down through here. But who knows? But this is the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it from, an channel from the last 4 years, not the COVID channel, which is going straight up. I think we definitely oversold in here. You can see, these areas were definitely touched by this channel. So I think we're still gonna be looking at a channel something like this, right? So anyways, that's my update on S&P, and we'll see what this week is gonna look like. So happy trading, everybody. Have a good week.